The end. Lying on his back, Rickabaron opened his eyes a bit and saw the sloping ceiling of thick cane. From the other room there came the strumming of a guitar, like some inconsequential labyrinth, infinitely tangling and untangling. Little by little, reality came back to him, the ordinary things that now would always be just these ordinary things. He looked down without pity at his great, useless body, the plain wool poncho that wrapped his legs. Outside, beyond the thick bars at his window, spread the flatland and the evening. He had slept, but the sky was still filled with light. He groped with his left arm until he found the brass cowbell that hung at the foot of the cot. He shook it once or twice. Outside his door, the unassuming chords continued. The guitar was being played by a black man who had shown up one night flattering himself that he was a singer. He had challenged another stranger to a song contest, the way traveling singers did. Beaten, he went on showing up at the general store and bar night after night, as though he were waiting for someone. He spent hours with the guitar, but he never sang again. It could be that the defeat had turned him bitter. People had grown used to the inoffensive man. Rickabaron, the owner of the bar, would never forget that contest. The next day, as he was trying to straighten some bales of yerba, his right side had suddenly gone dead on him, and he discovered that he couldn't talk. From learning to pity the misfortunes of the heroes of our novels, we wind up feeling too much pity for our own. But not Rickabaron, who accepted his paralysis as he had earlier accepted the severity and the solitudes of the Americas. A man in the habit of living in the present. As animals do, he now looked up at the sky and reflected that the red ring around the moon was a sign of rain. A boy with Indian-like features, Rickabaron's son, perhaps, opened the door a crack. Rickabaron asked him with his eyes whether anybody was around. The boy, not one to talk much, made a motion with his hand to say there wasn't. The black man didn't count. Then the prostrate man was left alone. His left hand played a while with the bell, as though exercising some power. The plains, in the last rays of the sun, were almost abstract, as though seen in a dream. A dot wavered on the horizon, then grew until it became a horseman riding, or so it seemed, toward the house. Rickabaron could make out the broad-brimmed hat, the dark poncho, the piebald horse, but not the face of the rider, who finally reined in the horse and came toward the house at an easy trot. Some 200 yards out, he veered off to the side. At that, the man was out of Rickabaron's line of sight, but Rickabaron heard him speak, get down off his horse, tie it to the post, and with a firm step enter the bar. Without raising his eyes from the guitar, where he seemed to be looking for something, the black man spoke. "I knew I could count on you, sir," he softly said. "And I knew I could count on you, old nigger," the other man replied, his voice harsh. "A heap of days I've made you wait, but here I am." There was a silence. Then the black man spoke again. "I'm getting used to waiting. I've been waiting now for 7 years. Unhurried, the other man explained. It had been longer than 7 years than I'd gone without seeing my children. I found them that day, and I wouldn't have it, so I'd look to them like a man on his way to a knife fight." "I understood that," the black man said. "I hope they're all in good health." The stranger, who had sat down at the bar, gave a hearty laugh at that. He ordered a drink and took a sip or two, but didn't finish it. "I gave them some advice," he said, "which is something you can never get too much of and doesn't cost a lot. I told them, among other things, that a man ought not to go spilling another man's blood." A slow chord preceded the black man's response. "Good advice, too. That way they won't grow up to be like us. Not like me, anyway," said the stranger, who then added, as though thinking out loud, "Fate would have it that I kill, and now it's put a knife in my hand again." "Fall's coming on," the black man observed, as though he hadn't heard, "and the days are getting shorter." "The light that's left will be enough for me," replied the other man, getting to his feet. He stood square before the black man, and in a tired voice said to him, "Leave that guitar alone. Now, you've got another kind of contest to try to win today." The two men walked toward the door. As the black man stepped outside, he murmured, "Could this be the one goes as bad for me as the other one did?" "It's not that the first one went bad for you," the other man answered, serious. "It's that you couldn't hardly wait to get to the second one." They walked beside each other until they got some distance from the houses. One place on the plains was much like another, and the moon was bright. Suddenly they looked at each other, stopped, and the stranger took off his spurs. They already had their ponchos wrapped around their forearms when the black man spoke. "One thing I want to ask you before we get down to it. I want you to put all your courage and all your skill into this, like you did 7 years ago when you killed my brother." For perhaps the first time in their exchange, Martin Fierro heard the hatred. His blood felt it like a sharp prod. They circled, clashed, and sharp steel marked the black man's face. There is an hour just at evening when the plains seem on the verge of saying something. They never do, or perhaps they do, eternally, though we don't understand it. Or perhaps we do understand, but what they say is as untranslatable as music. From his cot, Rekabaran saw the end. A thrust, and the black man dodged back, lost his footing, feigned a slash to his opponent's face, and then lunged out with a deep jab that buried the knife in his belly. Then came another thrust, which the storekeeper couldn't see, and Fierro did not get up. Unmoving, the black man seemed to stand watch over the agonizing death. He wiped off the bloody knife in the grass and walked slowly back toward the houses, never looking back. His work of vengeance done, he was nobody now. Or rather, he was the other one. There was neither destination nor destiny on earth for him, and he had killed a man.